And it's your friend Dom C here with GreenBean Jets fan for another episode of the Project Prospect podcast. God, I can't get that out sometimes. Just another deep dive into some of these NFL draft eligible players that we're definitely going to see have their name called on in April, and guys that probably would be really good fits for our New York Jets. So today's going to be an interesting one, and I'm super pumped. I've got one of the guys in this content creation business that I personally really like, that I look up to, always follow, and this one's probably not going to get a lot of love from all you Jets fans because he does cover, and his favorite team is all the way up there in upstate New York, basically in Canada with the Buffalo Bills. But I want to bring on Anthony from Cover One. Anthony.
You got me with the Canada line.
Oh, I know.
Well played. No, thank you very much for having me. We were chopping it up before we went online, and you were too kind with all the things you said about me, especially considering I just make up everything I say and there's no truth to anything that I say here. But no, I appreciate you having me, and I'm excited to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, dude. So those who don't know Anthony, he works with Cover One. He's the host of the Disguised Coverage show on YouTube. That's on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. And he also co-hosts the Film Room on Wednesdays, which is at 7 p.m. on their YouTube channel. And those who have not followed the Cover One guys on YouTube, Jets fan, Bills fan, whatever fan, do yourself a favor. If you want to really learn something, follow these guys. The Film Room stuff, the Film Room breakdown is like super legit. You guys, do an awesome job, and you should be totally proud, man. Awesome. And how'd you get started in this whole gig?
In like 2017, the fall of 2017, I had a buddy and we just decided to do a podcast. And so to kind of it's a long story, but to kind of make it short, we started it in like 2018, like the fall of 2018, started to get some traction, but we casted a really wide net. So we did sports, and like every sport, we did football, baseball, basketball, hockey, like MMA. We did TV shows, movies, wrestling, did almost anything and everything. He ended up having to step away. And when he stepped away, I was like, well, I don't really care about what I have to say individually. I was just doing this because it was a cool thing to do with my buddy. But we kind of gained some sort of traction. I didn't want it to completely go away.
Sure.
So I kept doing the show solo. I was not having fun. And it was also really hard to stay up on so many topics and do a weekly show. So I was like, what can I do to make this more fun? And what can I do to kind of be more efficient in how I prepare for it? And I was like, okay, well, what do I love? And what do I already consume on a daily basis? And I was like, okay, Buffalo sports. So I started it as I rebranded in April of 2020 into a Bills and Sabres podcast, but COVID was happening. So nothing was happening in hockey. So it was pretty much just all Bills. I did that from April 2020 to about September of 2020. And then Cover One kind of caught wind of me. Had been scouting me for a little bit and brought me on. And I've been rolling with them ever since.
Oh, awesome. That's awesome. And really uplifting for those who are trying to cut their teeth in this whole gig, in this whole content creation stuff, me especially. So that's great to hear. That's a
big piece. I think playing ball, and again, the level I played at, and that definitely helped me. It makes me be able to connect the dots easily, or more easily, I should say, with what I do now. But again, just with what information is available at your fingertips, I think experience does help, but I'm not one of those people that has to be like, well, no, if you want to understand ball, you need to have played. You need to have been able to do that. I mean, look at somebody like Mina Kimes, who was awesome listening to her talk ball. She didn't play football. She doesn't have any experience in that realm of it, but you listen to her break down ball, she knows what's up. And that's just one example, let alone the multitude of other great writers, whether there's, people for The Athletic or people for the Ringer podcasts, anything and everything. It's just a matter of how much work are you going to put in, right? If you haven't played, you're probably starting out a little more behind the eight ball, but that just means you got to put more hours in terms of studying and reading. So it doesn't mean you can't get there. It just means you might have to put in a little more work because you don't have that foundational base.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Before we talk about the prospects, obviously you being a NFL and football savant that you are, give me your kind of real super high view of the Jets as constituted right now. Talk to me about our roster. What is from the outside looking in? What do you see? And take the opposition point between the Bills and the Jets out of it. I know you'll talk objectively.
I'm gritting my teeth because like I know there's going to be Bills people that are going to watch it and be upset. I really like what the Jets have done. We were talking offline. It started with the hiring of Robert Saleh. I liked what he did in San Francisco. I liked all the things that he said and everything that he was about. Like, and granted, he hadn't been a head coach, so you don't really know, but it just seemed like everything that he was about, that's what you want your head coach to be about. Someone who was good on the field schematically, but a good culture dude and leader off the field.
Yeah, I think before you get into that, I think you hit it perfectly on the head. As a Jets fan and as a supporter of Robert Saleh, there's no doubt in my mind he's a phenomenal leader of man. He's a culture changer. The X's and O's and some of that stuff, it's still to be determined. But, as a leader, as that CEO type, leader of an organization, like I'm so stoked. I couldn't be happier.
And then you look at the roster. I've liked so many of the moves they made. I loved when Carl Lawson was one of my top free agents a couple years ago. And then when he, hurt his Achilles, I was like, oh, that sucks. But then you saw the impact that he made this year, even still not like being 100% and working his way back. And then, again, we'll start with that defense, like Quinnen Williams coming into his own and just being a legitimate all-pro caliber defensive tackle and a game wrecker against the run, against the pass, somebody who just can take over a game at any given time. And then the rest of the reinforcements on that defensive line, like what you got this year out of John Franklin Myers and Jermaine Johnson contributing a little bit, but Bryce Huff being like this third down nasty dude. I mean, he's the reason Josh Allen's elbow got jacked up because he beat Quisenberry off that right edge so hard and got into the backfield in the blink of an eye. And he had been doing that throughout the year. Then you get Sauce Gardner, who he was my corner 2 last year, but very close. I loved him and I loved Stingley. I don't think he could have gone either way.
I'm glad you say that because I too hung my hat and I catch so much grief because Stingley was my cornerback 1 last year.
But Stingley got hurt this year again, which was a concern. But like if all things were equal and they were both healthy, granted that's a part of the picture of why people I think had Sauce number 1 over Stingley in addition to him being great. Like Stingley is nasty as what he does. And even in the limited reps he had this year, he showed those flashes. And when you looked at his tape at LSU, like he was real legitimate. But Sauce,
yes, he was.
Like Sauce was great too. I had no problem. I went back and forth with a bunch of people in the draft space of who was corner 1 and corner 2. And not because I cared. I just liked Stingley. But like Sauce was phenomenal. We saw what he could be this year. But I think more importantly than Sauce, you saw what DJ Reed did on the opposite side, being like a legitimate, not even just like a corner 2, but like a high-end corner 2, but at times like a low-end 1, which is unbelievable. Like his play combined with Sauce, combined with what you got from the safety pairing this year and up front, like this defense just a group that looked bad in Saleh's first year. And then everybody was like, well, he's supposed to be a defensive guy. How come they suck on defense? Really helped change the tide defensively. And so it starts there. Their defense is sick. I legitimately believe if the Jets had made the playoffs, nobody wants to see the Jets in the playoffs because of that defense and how nasty they were. Offensively, 2 really great rookie pieces, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. We'll see what Breece looks like coming back from that injury.
Yeah, going to be a slow go probably. I mean, I don't expect that he's going to be anywhere near the Breece that we all, kind of know and fell in love with next year, but
you really got to give him that. Yeah, like that with that injury, like you got to give that first year back. You want to see them back, but usually it's not. Unfortunately, it's not really until that second year that you see him start to get back to form. But I mean, maybe that's still okay because you've got a running back who the Jets roster is so good. Like I really like Michael Carter like a lot, and then Zonovan Knight comes out of nowhere and is giving you good reps. And again, you got Garrett Wilson rolling, and we'll see what happens with the rest of the receiving core and this weird. I like Elijah Moore, but like he's not clicking, and there's like weird stuff off the field and weird stuff on the field.
He's a unique personality for sure. The talent is there.
That's a nice way to put it. That's a nice way to put it. He's a unique personality.
Yeah, the talent is there, but you sometimes, at least I wonder if the head space is ever going to match up to the physical traits.
And that's such a huge piece, right? Like
Absolutely.
everybody, when you get to the NFL, granted it can vary, but everybody's big and strong and fast and good at football, but it's like, it's how you prepare and how you understand the game. The mental game is what takes, meh to good and then good to great and then great to beyond, how you prepare and flow with the game. So we'll see what happens for him. And then the offensive line, when healthy, I think can be a good piece. We'll see what happens with Becton. I loved Elijah Vera Tucker a couple years ago too. Again, the Jets snagged a bunch of dudes who I loved in the draft process. We'll see what happens with him coming back from injury and the rest of that line. And then, I don't know, throw some money at Derek Carr or get Aaron Rodgers and try and solidify your quarterback position, and you go from there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the quarterback, you're not going to win if you don't have, somebody behind that can do it. We showed that, and it's unfortunate too, because like you said, I think Joe Douglas, again, I'm not saying this as a Jets fan, saying this as a true football fan, like the job that he's done literally breaking down that entire team down to the studs and rebuilding it with pieces, cleaned up all the financial mess that McCagnon left for him, and put in, having a lot of hits in the drafts, but it's going to be kind of that one miss, like this team is at a whole different level. If you got Zach Wilson playing like the number 2 overall pick that you would, and you're working off of his rookie contract, now we got to take in, 30, 35 million, 40 million dollars that wasn't expected. And it takes away from the ability to add another premier person, whether it's on the offense or defense, so on and so forth. I mean, I just think, it's such a different game. It's a game changer. And listen, Buffalo did it with Josh Allen. Cincinnati's doing it. Cincinnati's doing it with Joe Burrow. When you hit on the quarterback, you're able to put big pieces around them and just, and accelerate that rebuild.
Yeah. And that seems to be like the formula that teams like to go with now. You hit on that rookie quarterback and you really try to go hard in that first 4 to 5 year range and take advantage of that low cap hit and that low monetary commitment that you have to give to the quarterback. And if you do, it works wonders. If not, you're kind of kicking yourself a bit like the Jets are. But I think on the silver lining in all of it, great. Yeah. You're going to have to sink some money into somebody to come in and play quarterback. But I don't think with how the Jets team is built offensively and defensively, the good news is I don't think they need a top 5 or a top 10 quarterback. Just get some stabilizing quarterback. And then that defense is sick. That defense is a legitimate top 5 defense, whether you're watching it on tape or you're, taking a look at the metrics with what they can do. So if you just get some stabilizing quarterback play, yes, you're going to have to pay some money a little bit. Yes, you're still annoyed that you invested such an early pick in Zach Wilson, but I still think there's a silver lining. And once you kind of get over the kicking yourself bit a little bit, that this team could be a really dangerous team if they just get some semblance of quarterback play.
Yeah, the metric, the litmus test that I always talk about, it's the Jacoby Brissett factor. If we had a quarterback that played at Jacoby Brissett's level last year, we'd probably a 10-win team and break that playoff streak. But
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, he's like the
baseline. If you get somebody that's going to come in there and offer you, from anywhere from quarterback 16 to 20, you win 2 to 3 more games.
That's very fair.
That's all you need. And granted, that's not all you want. Some people, it's championship or nothing. But listen, we haven't been in the playoffs in 12 years. We got to take baby steps here. And I really, really believe this. And I mean this from the heart of hearts. I think that Joe Douglas has built this team the right way, and I think it's going the right way. And what he does, what I've obviously last year, I mean, I think he knocked the draft, the 2022 draft out of the park. Obviously we talked about you talked about Garrett and Sauce, and they obviously offensive and defensive rookie of the years. We got Breece Hall in the second round. You got good play out of Michael Clemens, a 25-year-old nobody from Texas A&M. I shouldn't say nobody, but you even got good production, rotational production from him. Max Mitchell came in, was supposed to be the pipeline. Let's let's bulk him up. I liked him in college too, but I thought the same thing was 6'6", under 300 pounds. I mean, he's going to need, a good year or two in the weight room. But he came in and, for the little bit that he played before, he went on IR, he was, rather productive. Makai's, a question mark. Love the talent, hate the availability. And, we actually have, your guy. You took one of ours and Greg Van Rotten. He's the reason Mekhi Becton went down.
I know.
He is the most hated person in Jets Twitter. You know that?
No, I did not know. I did not know that hate piece.
Greg, he's known as Greg Van Rotten, and he rolled up. Listen, I say it, tongue in cheek, obviously, but he did. He missed a block, and then rolled up into Mekhi Becton, and that was the downfall. That was the first injury. So he is the most hated person in the Jets Twitter sphere.
That's
So
super funny. Of all the people,
right?
so
Greg
hated.
Van Roten. So listen, let's talk about a little bit about this draft now. We're smack dab in the middle of the combine. We came through the Senior Bowl, and that's really, I know their motto is, draft season starts here and so on and so forth. And this year was my first experience in Mobile, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. It was awesome. So I learned so much. I got to be involved, at a completely different level that I would. But just really watching and seeing these guys play. Now, I don't know, were you down there yourself? I know a bunch of your guys were from Cover One. You were.
Yeah, I was one of the. We had 5 or 6 of us down there. Yeah. It was a great time. It was my first time there as well. It was tremendous.
Let's talk about the back of the defensive side, and we'll dive into the safeties. So, who are the guys at Mobile that you liked? Who are the guys that you're seeing now? Who are the guys that you scouted and have really caught your eye at the safety position?
Oh, good question. So if we're starting in Mobile, both leading in my game tape prep for the week and then in that week itself, starts with Chris Smith, safety from Georgia. I just think he's on the undersized end. He's going to be under 6 foot. He's going to be anywhere from like 190 to 185 pounds playing weight. Like he's listed at 195, which means he weighs less. But you saw glimpses in Mobile of what you see when you watch the tape. Like he's just really ready made for the modern NFL with the coverages that they play in Georgia. His ability to function as a single high safety, a 2 high safety. He can function in cover 2, cover 4. He can function in match coverages. Like you watch him scan the field and be able to pick up posts and drags, and his ability to slice and poach and read the play and anticipate and jump. He's a very heady, cerebral safety. He's good coming forward. He comes forward with urgency, but he comes forward under control. He's somebody who I have him as my safety too. The safety class as a whole isn't ideal this year.
I would agree, man. Like, obviously Branch and someone that put Antonio Johnson up there. Like, are they safeties? Are they slot? Are they going to play slot at the next level? So on and so forth. So the whole class is all over the place. So I like that you talked about Chris Smith as your number 2. I have him high up as well, not at number 2, but high enough. So continue.
Yeah, he's a good dude, and to kind of put it in perspective, like he's my safety too.
Yeah.
But I have like a back second round grade on him. Like if he went in the mid 2s, I'd be like, oh, okay. But I think he's more of like a late 2, early 3 type of pick. And that's how that safety class is. And Brian Branch that you mentioned, I have him at the top. But how are teams going to use him? Do teams want to really sit him back there and be an actual safety, or do they want to take advantage of that versatility that he offers in the slot and in the back end? Are you going to play him as a traditional safety, or are you going to use him in that star or apex defender role that Alabama used him in? It's similar for Antonio Johnson. If you watch one game and you're like, oh, this dude's a safety. But if you happen to watch another game, you're like, oh, he's a nickel corner only, and he's huge. Like, what is going on? Like, there's so much with that class. And then you go in further down the pike, tying in overall, but even some more Senior Bowl guys. You got somebody like Sidney Brown, who is just an absolute unit, runs well. He had a good 40 time today at the combine. He has a tremendous frame, is jacked out of his mind, flows around everywhere, fits the run, is great around the box. But what does he look like playing deep? Is he more fit to be a box safety and the hook curls and the curl to flats? Like, how much work can he do deep and away from the line of scrimmage? He's got a teammate there as well, Jartavius Martin, who I really, really, really like. He's got like multiple level versatility. He played safety at Illinois. He played slot corner. He also played outside corner, like 2 of their final 3 games this past season. And he did well in everything. He ran in the mid 4.4s today and had a good Senior Bowl as well. Like this class as a whole, it's not strong from a traditional safety perspective. And I don't think it's got like great top tier depth. Like if you're not getting Brian Branch in round 1, I don't think you're taking any safety in round 1. And even in round 2, I'd wait until the back end. But the good news is there are guys with a lot of scheme versatility and Swiss Army knife potential that can be used. So again, if you're looking to fill that need, it can be had throughout days 1, 2, and even early on day 3.
Yeah. Now you talked about Sidney Brown, man. They do something right at Illinois, man. The amount of NFL caliber defensive packs that they've been putting out, right?
Yeah, and then Devin Witherspoon, their corner.
Witherspoon, I mean, they got Witherspoon.
Year.
They had two safeties that that made the league last year. The kid that went to Detroit, and we got one an undrafted free agent, Tony Adams, who can come in. He played more of that star in college, but he's come in and he's shown in the limited reps that he's taken. He's going to challenge. He's going to challenge for that starting free safety spot. Assuming they don't bring back Marcus Joyner, who at 34 years old, I'm sure they're not, but.
They've been able to produce some good dudes, and like you mentioned, Kirby Joseph in Detroit, he had a really good rookie year. And it looks like Brown and Martin could offer you some value. And again, Devin Witherspoon, they're kind of becoming. We'll see what happens with Martin and Brown. I think they're more projection than Witherspoon, who some people have Witherspoon as like a top 5 prospect and their number 1 corner. He excites a lot of people. He's definitely good on tape. Yeah, they've and I think that helps a little too. If you take a guy from a program that shows they have a track record of producing talent at that position, it kind of gives you a little more impetus to be like, yeah, let's dip into that pool. And hopefully, he turns out like the other successful people from that school.
So of the safeties that you talked about, you just briefly mentioned you talked about Chris Smith. You talked about Sidney Brown. You talked about Antonio Johnson. If you're the GM or if you're an NFL coach, where are you fitting him in? Do you think Chris Smith can play single high? Do you think he's better around the box? Because I seem to have a different opinion. I know he's small and he's slight of frame, but I think he does such good work coming downhill and so on and so forth. And I could see him in those fits or using him to blitz, so on and so forth. I like him. I think I'd like him more around the box. What do you think?
Oh no, I agree. I think he can do everything. And he's shown it on tape. If you watch the 2021 tape, he was focusing more as a single high post safety. And then he was also, more down the box. Georgia was playing a little more single high coverages, cover 1 and cover 3 in 2021.
And there's something to be said about, the captain of that defense, that Georgia defense, which just puts NFL, first and second rounders in the league time after time. Lewis Seen said that Chris Smith was the smartest football player he's ever played with in his life. How crazy is that?
Tremendous. Again, your point, this is coming from a guy who was on the team with Nakobe Dean last year, who for Georgia is literally Nakobe Dean on tape last year is literally calling out opponent plays. You can see him being like, nope, here comes the reverse, boom, and he takes care of it. Or he's calling out this guy's going to do this, watch here, and then he's attacking and going. So knowing that Chris Smith is getting that type of praise from somebody who was on the team with him and someone like Nakobe Dean, it's tremendous. And he's got 2 years of tape that speak to it. But anytime you get those player declarations from those guys who know what's up and are in the trenches with those guys, that's some really high praise. Yeah.
Before I got one more safety I want to ask you about. Before I get into that, I want to circle back to Antonio Johnson. Okay. Athletically, the measurables, he's all there. Like I said, which we touched on briefly. I just question, if he's more athlete than he is football player. What do you see on film from Antonio Johnson?
So I don't like Antonio Johnson too much. I don't know if he was hurt in the first game that I watched, but he was just moving very awkwardly and in ways that made me cringe. And he's a big hitter. When he comes forward, he's able to make plays. And you see the size and you see the frame and you see some of the versatility. But I don't know if he maximizes all of that athleticism and all of that frame, which I guess ties into your original question. For somebody who's that big and looks as imposing as he is and has some of that versatility, when it clicks, it's beautiful. When he's playing off the edge and he gets into the backfield clean and he crushes a running back, it looks gorgeous. Or if he picks up, a drag from the other side of the field and he closes, he can annihilate receivers. And you see it and it's he's the guy that if you're gonna watch and do the YouTube scouting, his highlights are going to be tremendous. And you're going to come away being this guy's the best safety prospect in the class. But when you start to watch it more, I do have questions about technique and some of the usage. I think I'll flesh a little more of that out as I go through watching more of his tape. But as of right now, I'm a little low on him. And I know he had a pretty decent day at the combine, but for me, I'm a bit down on him right now.
Yeah, you talked about him being a big hitter, and that shows up on all his game tape. Not the best tackler. A lot of missed tackles. Again, not ideal.
That's a good way to put it. He's a hitter. He's not a tackler.
Correct.
Which can work out because if you hit the hell out of somebody and you blow them up, cool. But then that also means you're missing tackles, and some of those missed tackles lead to big plays, especially in a defense where, if you want to use light boxes, you need your safeties to come from depth and make plays. And if they're swinging and missing, that means, a 5 to 7 yard gain becomes a 15 to 25 yard gain in a heartbeat.
You hit the nail on the head. Like a bullet coming from, deep center field that still misses, right?
Correct. Yeah. It looks pretty. It's a pretty miss, but it's still a miss, and it's not great.
So one more guy that I didn't do a lot of film work prior to Mobile on him, but after Mobile, I came right home and got into it as much. Now, it's not a name that we're going to hear probably day one or day two, but it's a guy that I think is a really good schematic fit for us. Talk about Kayvon Merriweather if you have any on him. The Iowa kid who I think, and I got to talk to him, I spent like 5-10 minutes really chatting him up and kind of digging into his head on how he sees football and where he thinks his fits are. And listen, I know he tested today and his numbers weren't great, but I didn't expect him to be a 4.2, 4.3 guy, but he's going to, he's smart. He plays with anticipation. Like, he's always got his nose in the ball. That just kind of the things that I liked to see on film from him. And like I said, schematically, I think he can step in and kind of, play. He's got enough range where he can play, he can play split safety. He can play that single high if asked to. He can also come up and help in the run fits and, and kind of blitz off the edge. He's a little bit, from a lower scale, one of those, jack of all trade kind of guy, just not with the hype of, say, like a Jalen Petrie from last year. You do any work on Merriweather?
I did. He was actually one of my guys that I had pegged as a person to watch going into the Senior Bowl, and I've continued since. I think you were pretty spot on in your analysis of him. He's 6 foot, 212 pounds. Did not have an ideal timed 40 today. I thought he would. He finished in like the 4.6s, but closer to like 4.7.
Which was crazy.
Because he plays fast.
Yeah,
and one of my like first notes for him is that he has the speed to match routes and collect routes from the route distribution and close. I didn't expect him to run like a 4.2 or a 4.3 or even a 4.4, but I thought he'd be in the 4.5s. And so it was maybe, but again, play speed is different than time speed.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And when you watch him on tape, he plays fast. He plays with leverage. I don't love how he takes on blockers, either receivers downfield or in fits necessarily by the line of scrimmage, but his ability to penetrate and get into the backfield at times when he's coming from depth. Again, he's got good closing speed despite what the 40 time says today. And I think a big thing for me, he understands how to space the field. And Ohio State's dudes on offense, like they all have speed and they all can fly, and he's keeping up with them. And it's not like he's keeping up with them because you want to say he's keeping up with them. Like, no, he's stride for stride and he's taking angles and he's cutting dudes off. And again, he's not perfect. He misses some plays here and there, but that was what had me encouraged from a speed perspective, which made me think, oh, this dude's going to time well because look, he's running with guys who I know run like 4.4 and 4.5, and he's staying with them. He'll time the same way. So I was legitimately surprised when I saw what he ran.
Yeah, guys, if you're just joining us, I'm talking to Anthony from Cover One, the host of This Guy's Coverage, which airs on YouTube, the Cover One YouTube channel, Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Also co-hosts the Film Room on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. You've been in this game and on this grind a little bit longer, so maybe you can, you might tell me differently, but I have to separate the numbers that they're putting up here in Indianapolis from what I see on tape. And like I said, the game I saw, the games I watched of Merriweather on tape, that wasn't 4.7 speed. Means something, but not everything.
No, it definitely means something. But the way I put it for the combine, and actually talked about it this week on Disguised Coverage with our lead draft analyst, it's for me, given all the work and everything that it takes, like it's impossible to know every single prospect like the back of my hand going into the combine. So I do two things going into the combine. I look for numbers to match what I've seen on tape already. And if it clicks, I'm like, okay, cool, boom. If it doesn't, I'll make a note of it and go back and be like, okay, like Merriweather, for example, I'm going to go back and watch tape again to be like, was I crazy? Like, is he slow? I don't think he is. But I'm going to go back and double check, a couple games or maybe, a half a ball and be like, no, we're good. Or the guys who I haven't scouted yet, I'm making notes of their times and then going through and be like, okay, like if Timmy over here ran a 4.5, when I watch the tape, I want to see, does he play like an actual 4.5 or is it just, especially with the way the combine is now, guys train for these drills.
Yeah.
Guys
absolutely.
spend months training to run the 40. They're not just showing up and running the 40. Like they're training for form and stance and pacing and angle and everything of how they run. They are training not for football. They're training for these drills. So even if somebody runs, whoa, that guy ran like a 4.35. That doesn't necessarily mean he plays at a 4.35. Can he process, right? Does he take good angles to the football? Because if you can't process, that means you're playing slow. If you take poor angles to the football, that means you have to be the fastest guy in the field, because if somebody's close to your speed or has the angle on you and you take a poor one, you're going to get beat. There's so much more that goes into it just from these time drills and these on-field workouts. You would like everything to match up with the tape. But for me, the tape doesn't lie. The tape gives you everything. It gives you the most opportunity in terms of sample size and the most opportunity to reduce variables. But I will use the combine as somewhat of a measuring stick to be like, okay, this guy did this. Let me keep an eye out for that when I go back. Or if it's something that I found contradictory to my initial evaluation, I'll go back to make sure I'm not crazy.
Yeah. And that's a perfect segue into bringing in the linebackers, because I want to read my first notes that I took after watching the first game on Jack Campbell.
Okay.
Tackling skills, elite and aggressive, probably will be an inside the tackle box only 2-down thumper. Those are the first line. Man, did he test out like a freak, and was I completely wrong? I didn't see the movement skills that he showed here at Indianapolis on film. That to me, and sometimes, I got to humble myself and say, all right, I got to go back and watch, because I obviously didn't see the athlete that just performed here. So again, is that game film right? Did he really prep himself this much, coming up to the combine to score like this? I mean, the thing with Campbell is it wasn't just one spot that he excelled. I mean, his 3-cone, his 40 time was adequate. The split, 10-yard split was good. His 3-cone was ridiculous, broad, everything. Like every athletic measure he knocked out of the park. And that's just not the player that I saw on film. I saw a big, typical 3-4 inside linebacker who's going to be kind of destined to play early downs inside the tackle box. And I guess I'm wrong. So why don't you touch on Jack Campbell for me?
Yeah, he had a wild combine. The 40 wasn't anything to write home about as a 4.65, but again, he's running that at like 248 pounds. His 20-yard split was a 2.69, which wasn't great, but he had a ridiculous 10-yard split at 1.59.
Yeah, 1.5 or something like that. And he was in the 1.5. It's ridiculous. That's a big guy.
1.59. Yeah, again, he's almost 6 feet and a half, 240, weighed at 249 pounds, but a 1.59 10-yard split, a 37.5 vertical, a 10.08 broad jump, a 6.74 3-cone, a 4.24 shuttle. I'm reading all of these from Kent Platt at I think it's MathBomb on Twitter, but he's got that relative athletic score website where he's breaking down everything. So that's tremendous. Like I did not, to your point, I didn't expect him to test that well. He's one I think is a good example, right? Like, because when I go back, I'm not going to go back and watch the film. He tested well, but I still think he's going to be limited in space. There are times in coverage and where his clunkiness kind of shows, or even in the run game where if you get him to stop moving his feet, he's done. Like there's a couple clips against Michigan where, and granted, like Corum is an extremely fast running back, but Corum just gives him a little hesitation and Campbell just kind of stutters and he gets blown by and it's not even close. But then you see other times where he's coming downhill against Ohio State and he's running through the line and he's darting through shoulders and he's making tackles in the backfield and he's shot like a bat out of hell coming forward. He's an interesting one because, I think your initial evaluation was, decently spot on. I think he can, I don't think he's a liability in coverage, but he's not that 3-down linebacker, or he's not a nickel linebacker where you can live. Like for the Buffalo Bills, for example, they're in nickel 90% of the time. Correct. So both of your linebackers have to be able to do everything, which is why, Edmonds is a free agent now, but you had guys like Milano and Edmonds. Jack Campbell's not going to survive in that role for the Buffalo Bills. Or if he does, it's going to be very, 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 very hard for him to like survive in that world. Yeah. And given the nature of today's NFL, I think there are going to be limitations, but from an in-the-box perspective, from a versus the run perspective, from an instincts, penetrating the line, reading the play out, playing with anticipation perspective, he's really up there. Like just when you watch the tape, you see those physical limitations, and he tested very well. But again, it all speaks to his play in the box, right? Like we're talking about those good scores, having a good shuttle and a good 3-cone and the broad and the 10-yard split. A lot of those point to explosion and athleticism in a short area, which is where he succeeds. Like he's very athletic in the box. It's the reason he can avoid tackles and guards and shoot the gap and make plays. But once you start to really spread it out, you see that short area quickness and burst has to turn into longer areas of sustained speed. And that's where he starts to temper it a little bit.
Yeah.
I think in an ideal world, he's that kind of like that 3-4, like middle linebacker. But no, I think he has enough athleticism to function as that 4-3 middle linebacker. Again, even some of the coverage reps, like he's not a coverage maven, but he's not a liability and he's not completely deficient.
No, he could sit. He sits in. And he sits in zones well, and he can find it. He passes off the receivers, all that stuff. I mean, I don't know how much you hang your hat on it. Because I don't really, but PFF has been hyping him up like best man coverage in all of college football at the position, so on and so forth. Again, it's not anything that I saw. Not knocking the player. I just think that that's just not his forte. You see Jack Campbell. You see a force. At the point of attack, blowing through, a violent, efficient tackler, inside that box. It just, and with the high level, the high amount of, nickel and dime coverage that defenses are running this year, I just don't know where he's going to be a fit on our team, on our team, and then on yours as well.
And I see that with, someone who I compare him to, and they're not completely like for like in terms of skill set or comps, but Leo Chenal, the linebacker from Wisconsin last year, went to the Chiefs. Like I thought he was a good pick by the Chiefs, but he was used as the third linebacker when they went up against heavier personnel formations. And mostly everything they were doing was like, yo, bro, just go run forward. Just go make a play. We're either blitzing you or we're telling you to go shoot this gap and play it like it's going to be a run. And if it's not, read it out and try and get to the quarterback. Granted, he had a little more pass rush experience than Campbell, but I think that's the kind of world that he's going to have to live in, either like that third linebacker early on against teams that are running heavier personnel and base type of sets on the offense, or pro personnel, whether it's 2 running backs or 2 tight ends. He's got to be in those 3 linebacker sets in the middle. I think he can function, but I just don't think he's necessarily built for the spread world that linebackers occupy now.
I couldn't, spot on. I agree 100% with what you say and where Campbell fits, so on and so forth. Let's transition into another big name, another kid at Mobile, another Senior Bowl boy, and that's Daiyan Henley from Washington State. Another good prospect. Like I said, he's obviously a little smaller. I think he's around 6'1", 6'2", 220 pounds. Obviously a former wide receiver, so he's got those athletic chops. I think at Nevada he returned kicks even. Again, interesting player. Interesting, kind of big scope athletically. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about Henley. He's a guy that probably, I think is more along the lines, more so than Jack Campbell, at least. I don't think he's the perfect fit for us, but he's more along the lines of the player that I think Robert Saleh loves at that linebacker position. I mean, he has this tendency to take these, big, fast, aggressive, people who played safety, bringing them down, getting them a little bit bulked up and making players out of them that way. And to me, even though that's not the exact path that Henley went, it's kind of the same avenue. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about Henley.
He first caught my eye at the Senior Bowl. He's somebody I didn't scout going into it, and he kept flashing in position drills.
Yes,
with his speed, his movement. He just kept blowing up running backs in pass protection drills. And then when they go into 7-on-7 or they go into team, or again in drills covering running backs out of the backfield, like he was just covering option routes really well and closing down on running backs. He showed good anticipation. He showed good leverage. He showed good speed. He's somebody who also too, like when you look at him, like he's an impressive dude to like look at. Like he's built, he's got a good frame. Like he looks like a football player. He looks like how you want like a football player to look like, especially at that level. And yeah, he's somebody that I think is worth, I don't want to make it seem like he's only worth a flyer, but I think he's somebody that is like a cool, like worth a flyer pick with the athleticism. And I think he's still in the infancy of learning linebacker because of his previous history in other positions. So in theory,
very, very raw. I think he's only got like 30 games under his belt on the defensive side of the ball, you know?
So he's still growing.
And the film, at least the limited Washington State film that I was able to get my hands on, you know, not a big hit over there in, you know, in La La Land where I get my all 22s, but you know, I didn't see anything. I didn't see him offer anything on the pass rush. So, you know, there's also that, you know, obviously he's going, there's going to be a learning curve for him, you know, but the athletic profile to me is just something that piques my interest. Where would you say, do you think he's a day 2 pick?
Oh, I want to see what he does at the pro day, and grind some more tape on it. I love it. Yeah, the Washington State tape is limited, probably because nobody plays defense in the Pac-12, so nobody cares about that. But I think he could potentially climb up into day 2 on the back end of like round 3. Again, all it takes is one team looking for that fit or that skill set. I think a 3 to 5 range ballpark is pretty safe. I put like round 4 as the median, but I think if, you know, when all's said and done with the combine, and then if he has a stellar pro day, also, you know, depending on how he interviewed well, or how well he did interview, I should say, at the combine and the Senior Bowl, that'll go a long way. But I think there's a lot to like, and enough that this linebacker class isn't ideal. I think it's similar to the safety class in the fact that it's kind of meh, and there's more value towards the middle rounds of it, that it really, you just need one team who likes that skill set. And he might not be like the 4th best linebacker, but maybe he's the 4th linebacker off the board because his skill set matches this team need and this team likes him. And the linebacker class, again, is so wonky that I could see like the first 10 linebackers off the board. I think if you ask 10 different people, you'd probably get legitimately 10 very different orders, because so much of it is going to be team fit based on what those skill sets have.
I think at worst, you're getting somebody that's going to come in and offer you something on special teams right off the bat. I mean, that athletic profile is going to be good. You know, he's got the coverage skills like you talked about, that, you know, he can play in those nickel sets. He can play in those dime sets. So, you know, before, who knows if he turns into a true 3-down, you know, a 3-down player at the next level. But at the 3rd round, 4th round, you know, you take the shot and you hope that he progresses or develops into that. So,
and you saw too, like what the Jets did with, you know, Quincy Williams, who isn't the best coverage linebacker, but he's
horrible.
Around. No, he's not great. I was trying to be nice, but he runs around like his hair is on fire and like a missile, and you just use him sideline to sideline and coming forward. And I think Henley has better coverage skills than Williams, and you saw what the Jets were able to do with Williams. Again, like if you're fitting that piece in with Mosley at that second level and that tremendous defensive line that's going to cover up for almost anything you have at the second line, okay, or at the second level, okay, like add a dude with speed who also flies around and who has a little bit more natural coverage skills, who's also, again, still raw and still growing. I think that would be a fun pick.
Yeah. So you talk about Quincy Williams, who is unrestricted right now. You know, we'll see if he comes back. I know Saleh talked about he wants to retain a lot of his own. You know, Quincy might be in that $5 to $7 million range, and you know, who knows how much room they're going to have, how much money they're going to have, since you got to pay a quarterback. You got Quan, who really came in and played for $2 million last year. You can't expect that he's going to sign that same deal. Although, you know, I would love, he's the kind of guy I'd love to bring back. You know, if it was cost effective. You know, you could tell he fit into our defense, has familiarity with Robert Saleh from his days back in San Francisco. I'd love to bring him back. However, you know, I think he might, I don't know if we're going to get him back at that same cheap deal. So I think if anyone, they might lean to keep Quincy and fill that Will spot somewhere else. So talk about a prospect hero who there's 2 guys that come to mind when I think about like a true Will that can fit in our defense, chase and tackle, so on and so forth. One's Owen Papo from Auburn. The other one who I really like, one of my favorite linebackers in the class, is Dorian Williams from Tulane.
Williams is another one who, one of the guys we were with just kept calling him like baby Tremaine Edmonds at the Senior Bowl, because he's just like big and has those dreads, and then he moved really, really, really well. yeah, he caught my eye at the Senior Bowl. He caught my eye at the Combine again yesterday. I haven't fully dove into his tape, but in seeing him in person, he flashed a bunch. Again, you see the athleticism, and you see when you have that will spot, you want somebody who can read and react quickly and process, but then has the physical ability to shoot gaps, get in the backfield, cause a little bit of havoc. I think Williams ticks that box. And yeah, Papo, like, good enough coverage skills on tape. I've only watched one game of his so far. I watched the Bama game, which he had an interception in. But he showed out at the Combine as well. Like, good movement, good ability, good size. Like, and again, you're just looking for somebody who has enough of those traits to fit into that role that you're trying to occupy. And I think it makes sense given like what would be asked of them in that Jets defense. You don't need somebody who's the most complete player. You just need somebody who has these specific traits or these skill set pieces, and you can just lean into those in a specific role. And I think both of those guys tick that box. Good call.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, we very heavy zone base of the defense. So they're going to ask to cover the running backs and so on and so forth out of the backfield. Williams and Papo can both hang with those guys. I mean, when you get into more of the Williams tape, I think you'll see it. He's a fluid mover. He's got those buttery hips. He opens and goes. He plays sudden. I love how he gets downhill real fast. He steps up in all the run fits. Like, I think he's someone who's being slept on and not talked about enough. Listen, remember that 30 minutes I talked about?
I knew it was going to happen. I also talk a lot, so sorry.
No, that's okay, dude. Listen, it was this went fabulous. It was fast. It feels like we've been talking for 5 minutes. So before we close out, why don't you tell everyone, where they can find you, Ant?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at pro__ant. So pro 2 underscores ANT. Find me on Twitter. You find me on Cover One YouTube page or anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcast, Google, Spotify, anything and everything. My solo podcast is called Disguised Coverage, focusing on the Buffalo Bills and the X's and O's and the schematic pieces and incorporating film. Then I'm also the co-host of the Cover One Film Room. That's a pure film breakdown show. But from an off-season perspective, I'm really diving into a lot of, free agency players and ideas now for the Bills, but just in the NFL in general. And then as we move forward towards draft time, it'll be full steam ahead for draft content. So, obviously some of it is, pretty Bills focused, but I mean, if you love college football content and draft content, whether you care about the Bills or not, I'm breaking down players who are relevant to the draft in a variety of ways. So feel free to check out any of that. Yeah.
And guys, like I told you, if you don't follow Anthony or the Cover One guys, like, do yourself a favor and do it. You're going to learn. The content is constant. There's always new things. They go in a bunch of different ways and different avenues. It's a really good follow, and I highly suggest it. You'll see me in your streams, man. Look for that old 1960s style New York Jets logo. That's me. I'm going to stay quiet so the Bills fans don't beat me up in there, but
they can get pretty intense. So be careful if you do go out of there, or just put something up into the chat, and then I'll tell everybody to kind of go easy.
Oh no, listen, I got thick skin. I could take it, especially over a computer.
I would say everybody's jumping behind the keyboard, but no, I sincerely thank you for having me. As soon as you reached out, I was pumped, and it was just a matter of, it was funny when you reached out to me in the Twitter DM, I had gotten 4 other DMs that day for other podcast stuff. And gotcha. I was like, okay, like I got to settle. You were the 4th out of 4. So I had to solidify the other 3, but I was pumped. As soon as you asked me, anytime you ever want to have me back, you got me. I enjoyed my time here. I enjoyed talking ball with you. You also, I think, sell yourself a little short, like just listening to some of your analysis for the players and football in general. Like, you got a good head on your shoulders. And I know you mentioned like you're just starting to like cut your teeth and get into it, but I think you have a lot going for you. And so, I enjoyed this time too. It went flying by, and it was cool to be in enemy territory for a little bit here in Jets land. One more thing in just relation to like my analysis for any potential people out there. I'm not a Bills homer in any way. So don't think you're ever going to check out my stuff or ask about a Bills player and I'm going to say he's amazing. And then you ask me about a Jets player and I'm going to shit on him and say that they suck. I don't do that. Some people on Cover One will. That's not my bag. It's just objective analysis. And I appreciate you recognizing that and having me on. I had a ball.
Nah, my pleasure, man. I can't wait to do it again. And we will soon at some point. So listen, guys, I hope you enjoy the podcast. If you're listening to it, if you're watching it, make sure you find all my content on YouTube at GreenBean Jetsfan. That's one word, GreenBean Jetsfan. You can also follow me on Twitter at DC_NYJets. And until next week or the next show, have yourself a good night and go Jets.